12. I don't know if I've ever heard a Thanksgiving message preached out of this passage. And I don't know if after I got done, I was like, I don't know if this is as Thanksgiving messagey as I had hoped it would be, but I think it's going to be fun. So I do have a confession for you. Guys, I'm going to talk to the guys first. I have a confession, and I'm glad she left because sometimes I forget to say thank you to my wife. I don't know if you guys know that. Like, sometimes I forget to thank her for all of the things that she does for me and for our family. I know you are probably shocked, and I'll wait a moment for that to fade. Okay, I'm going to say I'm probably not alone, guys, right? Like, if we had to put up our hands, how many guys are really thanking their wives as much as they should? Yeah, right? And I heard the amen, but here's the thing, ladies. You're not off the hook either. How many of you thank your husbands on a regular basis? Young people who live at home. Oh, Mary's got her hand up. Good. And I see Sandra's got her hand up. Happy husbands there. But what about young people? You live at home. Like, how often do you thank your parents for putting a roof over your head, buying you cool stuff at Christmas time and all of those kinds of things? How often are you thanking them? Parents, are you grateful for the blessing of your children? And do you tell them on a regular basis how thankful you are for them? So maybe you're the person who is good at being thankful. Maybe you're actually good about being thankful to your spouse, your parents, but let's take it up one notch. It's one thing to be thankful towards somebody, and one thing to tell them that you're thankful for them and for the things that they do. But how many of us actually go the extra step and we go out and we tell other people? People who might not be part of our family, people who might just be friends or coworkers. How many of us go out and we tell other people about our loved ones and how thankful we are for them? Seriously, like dating couples will brag on each other. If you've been around it, you know how nauseating it is. Sometimes it's socially expected to compliment or praise a spouse. Like if you win a Grammy or an Oscar or an Emmy, then, you'll hear, thank you to my wife, thank you to my husband, whatever it is. But outside of that, I wonder how many of us actually go out to lunch with a friend and spend time talking up that other person in our lives. I'm guessing it's probably a rarer occurrence than we would be willing to admit. And that's sad. It's sad for me because I'm guilty of it. It's sad because if we are blessed by people, is it not a blessing to tell other people how blessed we are by them? This morning's passage, we're going to take a look at Isaiah's message to the southern tribes of Israel. This is after the tribes had split, and there was northern tribes and there were southern tribes, and they were at war with each other. And it's before the Assyrian conquest, and they're about to endure the anger of God. But in the midst of it, we're going to find a message of hope for the future. And in the end, not only are they going to be grateful for all that God has done for them, but they're going to be so enamored of God, so in love with God, that they are going to open their mouths and they're going to tell the whole world about Him. And Isaiah promises that through them, others are going to hear and they're going to be invited to rejoice with them in the works of the Lord. So we're going to read through Isaiah chapter 12. It's only 6 verses, and I'm going to start in verse 1, and he says, "In that day you will say, I will praise you, Lord. Although you were angry with me, your anger has turned away, and you've comforted me. Surely God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord Himself is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. In that day you'll say, give praise to the Lord, proclaim His name, make known among the nations what He's done, and proclaim that His name is exalted. Sing to the Lord, for He has done glorious things. Let this be known to all the world. Shout aloud and sing for joy, people of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel among you." And this morning, if you looked in your notes at the back of your bulletin, you'll see there's only 2 points that come out of this, because it's really just a message that's split in half. And the first half of this message is, the main point here is, when we trust God, we have joy and we have salvation. We have joy and salvation. And as believers, our trust belongs to no one else. Look with me at verse 2 real quick. He says, surely God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. But if we back up to verse 1, he says, I will praise you, Lord, although you were angry with me. Now, this is a quote. Isaiah is saying to somebody, he's saying, you, in that day, you're going to say this. And then he tells the words that person is going to say. He says, that person, whoever he's talking to here, they're going to say, you were angry with me, Lord, and your anger was turned away. And in order to understand what's going on here, we need to understand what was God angry about in the first place. It's hard to understand what anger has been turned away when we're not sure what the person was angry about in the first place. So if we back up to Isaiah chapter 7, just a few pages over, we're going to read verses 1 and 2. And it says, when Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, was king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram, and Pekah, son of Ramaliah, king of Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem, but they could not overpower it. So the king of Israel at the time, and another king, Aram, they formed an alliance to attack the southern tribes. So that invasion actually failed. But Ahaz then, who is the king of the southern tribes, he gets word that Aram went out and brought in Ephraim, which is another tribe, which is another, not a tribe of Israel, but it's another nation, right on the doorstep. He said, now the house of David was told, Aram has allied itself with Ephraim. So then the hearts of Ahaz and his people were shaken, as the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. So they hear, oh, so now it's not just 2 nations, it's 3 nations, and now their hearts are trembling. Now they're afraid. We're told Ahaz and his people are just quaking in their boots. So then if we drop down to verse 3 through 9, and I'm not going to read all of it, but I want to summarize it in this. God sends Isaiah with this message to Ahaz. And the basic gist of the message is, don't panic. Don't panic. I've got this, just trust me. In verse 4, we read this. God says to him, he says to Isaiah, tell Ahaz, don't be careful, keep calm, don't be afraid, don't lose heart because of these 2 smoldering stubs of firewood. He says, these nations, they're just firewood to me. It's fine. Just trust me. I got this covered. And then in verse 7, in chapter 7, verse 7, he says, yet this is what the Lord, the sovereign, says, it will not take place. These people, they're saying they're going to destroy you. I'm saying it's not going to happen. Just trust me. But then there's a warning that goes along with this in verse 9, and I want you to note this. He says to him, if you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. If you don't stand firm in your faith, then you will not stand at all. And so then in Isaiah 7:10 through 13, what we read is this. Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz. Ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether it's in the deepest depths or in the highest heights. But Ahaz said, I won't ask. I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, hear now, house of David, is it not enough to try the patience of humans? Will you now try the patience of my God also? What happened between verses 12 and verse 13? Well, here's what happened historically. Ahaz actually ignored what God said about trusting him, and he went out and he made an alliance with a new nation, an up-and-coming nation. That nation was Assyria. And if you're not familiar with Assyria, they were like the evilest bunch of world-conquering people you've ever seen. Ahaz said, I got to get these people off my back, so I will make an alliance with the king of Assyria. That's what happened between verses 12 and 13. And in verses 14 through 16, then God tells Ahaz, you're going to get a sign now. But now your sign won't be a sign of deliverance. I was going to give you that. Now your sign is going to be a sign of judgment. And he says Assyria is going to turn on Ahaz and his people. And God is going to purify his people of their distrust. But here's the thing. Ahaz here, he hides his distrust. And I feel like we do this sometimes. He hides his distrust under this veneer of false piety. False piety. He says, oh, I'm not going to ask for a sign. I won't put the Lord my God to the test. Well, here's the thing. God actually told him, ask me for a sign. I'll give it to you. The thing that he tested God in was saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I'd rather just not trust God. I'd rather go out and form an alliance with evil people, and I'll just go my own way. I'll do it in my own strength. He uses the right words, but his actions and his attitudes demonstrate his unbelief all the same. And can I be honest with us? You know I love all of us, right? You know I love all of you. Because I love you, sometimes I have to share some hard truths. And I have been very dismayed over all of the political stuff every 2 years for the last 25 years. Over the past few weeks, our wider Christian response to all that's going on in the world talks a big game of trusting God. We'll say yes, I trust God. But in the next breath, what we see is people saying, if this doesn't happen, the world's coming into an end. If we don't have this, then our country's going to be nothing. God is going to condemn us, and we're not trusting God. And here's what happens. The world looks at us. They see us. They hear us. And they hear us complaining. They hear us doing nothing but saying how bad things are. They hear very little actual gospel from us. They hear very little of us actually saying, you know what, I actually do trust God. No matter what comes, whatever may come, I will trust in the name of the Lord my God, and I will not be shaken in my faith. No matter what comes down the pipe, I will stand firm in the gospel. And then we need to speak the gospel. I've heard pastors delivering sermons filled with doom and gloom. They pepper in some encouraging phrases, but their negative outlook overshadows any attempt to direct attention to the gospel. And I'm 100% convinced, because of this passage, I'm 100% convinced that even when we say the right things, if we don't actually trust God, we place ourselves in the same position Ahaz is in. Saying the right things because it sounds pious. Yes, I trust God. But here's the thing, you can say you trust God, but if you don't actually trust Him, He knows. He knows the difference. Words are words. Actions are where we speak the loudest. And if we trust God, people need to know it. People need to know it. No exceptions. No conditions. No ands. No, I trust God, but. I trust God and. Sure, I trust God, but we need to. Let's be serious. If any part of your salvation or mine in this world or the next depended on us, God would have left us to do it. If we could have saved ourselves by any human means, He would have just let us. Why would He crush His Son? Why would He buy us with His blood at Calvary? Why would the God of universe clothe Himself in flesh and endure the shame of the cross so that we could trust ourselves to fix our society and our world? But that's what we want to do. We say we trust God, but then we want to fix all of the world's issues. He did not send his son to die on a cross so that we could fix things. He did it because he is fixing things. And at the cross, he said, "It's finished." Jesus told his followers, "I have overcome the world." It's already done, folks. Believing and living like salvation is coming to us through human systems is for the world. That's how the world operates. That's not for us. The psalmist says it. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. Psalm 27. Sometimes we don't feel like God has done enough for us, but that's the enemy's empty lies. God has done more than enough for us, I promise. We have nothing to complain about in this life, because if we got what we deserved, the world would be much worse than it is, not better. But the nice thing is that God's mercy turns away his anger. God's mercy turns away his anger. It says, "Your anger has turned away and you've comforted me." The reality is that God didn't remove his anger from us because we made the right choice. He removed his anger because he's a merciful God who has compassion on those who are disobedient. That's us. We're the disobedient. He just wants us to trust him. And so he demonstrates his trustworthiness in his nature. This chapter represents what God will do after the time of Assyria. If we were to go back through chapters 7, 8, and 9, we would see God giving us oracles of judgment, and those judgments actually came. They actually came. But God said, in the midst of this, after that time, here's what's going to happen. Your heart will be changed. God gives a promise that while the consequences are real, it is not his plan or his purpose to reject them forever. There's coming a time when God's wrath will be satisfied and his holiness becomes a comfort instead of a terror. And we know what Isaiah didn't know then, that Jesus came and then God's wrath has been satisfied, and that has happened now. God's wrath has been satisfied. It was poured out on Jesus at Calvary as he took the punishment for sins. And because of that, because of the sign of a boy born of a virgin, God's anger has been diverted, and we have comfort in that. And again, we have no ground then for complaint. No choice but to give thanks for what has been done for us. God has become our salvation, our strength, and our shield. The Lord himself is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. Isaiah tells the descendants of Ahaz that God was mad, but he will choose to become their salvation, and he brings both the punishment of sin and the mercy to remove it. God doubles the name of the Lord here, Isaiah doubles the name of the Lord here. The Lord himself. He's emphatic that he is our only hope in the world. And it is not found in anything else. We have hope in nothing else. The Lord is our defense. The Lord is our strength. He says that God's people will not only acknowledge God as their Savior, but also as their strength. And that word here, the Spirit being communicated, gives us a picture of being durable in a world that tries its best to shake our foundations. In our American culture, we talk about strength as something that we do. It's like, it's our strength, human ingenuity, that's what overcomes hardships. There's even this well-known phrase, and you guys can finish it for me, I'll start it, but he says, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And it makes me think about all those Ford commercials from back in the day. Their slogan is literally, built Ford tough. So I got on YouTube this week and I checked out a bunch of their commercials, and I remember some from back in the day. By the way, you don't get out of watching ads on YouTube if you go to YouTube to watch ads. You still watch more ads. But here they are, all these trucks, and they're like off-roading, they're pulling these heavy payloads, doing stunts, and I'm like, who is doing this with their actual... Do they think that people live in actual action movies? I don't know. Like, I saw one from the 80s. They suspended a truck like 10 feet off the ground or something like that on this like crane, and then they just dropped it. Just dropped the whole thing. I think they were trying to show how tough the suspension was. There was one where it climbed a mountain of cinder blocks. Just a mountain of cinder blocks. And one where they had to tow a Toyota pickup that was trying to drive in the opposite direction. And it did it like real easy. And all of that got me to thinking like, this is really what the brokenness of the world does to us. It pulls us in the wrong direction. It loads us down with heavy stuff. It picks us up just to drop us violently. But those of us in Christ are given His durability. Instead of when the going gets tough, the tough get going, I would argue that when the going gets tough, God's people should rely on God's toughness, not on their own. Because none of us is tough on our own. Left to our own, we would all just melt away. Because God is also our shield. It says He's our defense. He saves and He strengthens us, and He also defends us. Sometimes I get the feeling we're constantly on the defense. Maybe you feel the same way. Maybe we feel like we have to defend our position in the world. We even put it in those terms. We have to defend our ... whatever it is. Fill in the blank. We got to defend ourselves. And it rarely occurs to us that we're not actually playing defense. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 16, verse 18 real quick. Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. It's up here behind me if you want to read it. It says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades, hell, will not overcome it." The picture that Jesus gives for the church is not a defensive position. He says, the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Have any of you ever seen a gate? Seen a fence? A gate? Do gates move? Where do they go? They don't advance. A gate stays still. Gates are a defensive tool. If the gates of hell will not prevail against the church, who is on the advance? Hell or the church? What this suggests to us in Matthew chapter 16 is that the gates of hell should be afraid of the church, not the other way around. Hell should be afraid of us. One of my favorite quotes from one of my least favorite movies goes something like, "None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me." Brothers and sisters, we are not stuck on earth here with the powers of hell. They're stuck here with us. We're the dangerous ones. The strength of Jesus is our defense, and He is the only one we need. We have the strength of the Holy One of Israel on our side, and we play defense far too much. The ball is in our hands. We should be advancing. Our salvation produces joy then when we trust in God. He says, with joy you'll draw water from the wells of salvation. Water is life, and life is joy. Life without joy is no life at all. That's why Isaiah says, he says that our joy comes from the water of salvation. Jesus had a conversation with a Samaritan woman once, and He told her He alone could give water that would quench what she truly thirsted for. He preached a sermon once where He told His disciples that those who are blessed, overflowing with joy in this life, are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. He says they're blessed because they'll be satisfied. Our salvation is the water of life, and it is joy. And so we come to the second part of this passage, and he says our gratitude should serve an invitation for others to join our worship. That's the second point there. Our gratitude should serve an invitation for others to join our worship. So the overflow of our worship then should lead to the praise of His name. Isn't that what we do every Sunday? We come in here and we say, we thank the Lord so much that we open our mouths and we sing it. We sing it to one another. Verse 4, he says to them, "In that day you, the children of Ahaz, you will give praise to the Lord. You'll say this. You'll say, give praise to the Lord. Proclaim his name. Make known among the nations what he's done. Proclaim that his name is exalted. One of the most important things that we do is gather together and sing praise songs. And when we do that, we remind each other of who God is, what he's done for us. We encourage each other in our faith. But it shouldn't end here in this room, because he says that our praise should be taken to the streets. He doesn't say you'll say this to each other. He says you'll make it known among the nations. If our singing stops in here, we've stopped too soon. It's okay to come in here and sing about the Lord, but look around you, folks. How many, if I said, hey, raise your hand if you don't know the Lord, how many hands do you think you'd see in this room? So we come in here and it's good to sing to each other about what the Lord has done. That's good. But it shouldn't stop here. There's people out there who don't know the Lord. Mark chapter 5, 18 through 20. Jesus has just gotten done healing a man with demons in him. Famous passage where the demon called himself Legion, for we are many. Jesus gets into the boat after that episode, and the man who was demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus, just let me go with you. And Jesus did not let him. But he said, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has mercy on you. I'm going to stop right there. We'll read the rest in a second, but this just occurred to me. How many people, how many Christians spend all their time thinking, Lord, I just want to go home with you. And that's not bad. We should want to go home with the Lord. But when that becomes our sole focus so much that we forget to go out and tell other people, that's not what Jesus told this man to do. You'll come with me when I'm good and ready for you to come with me. Right now, your job is to go out and tell other people. Folks, we'll go to him when he's ready for us. We should wait for it. We should expect it. But in that waiting and in that expectation, we should go out and share with other people what the gospel is and what God has done for us. He says this, it says, the man went away and he began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. They were amazed. He just went and he opened his mouth, and over the past few years, we've been building this foundation at this church. And listen, any of you have ever seen it done? Building a foundation is not flashy. If you've seen a building being done, foundations aren't flashy. That's not the part that people see. People will see the building. It's not the part that you want to see, really. Sometimes we just want to build the house first because that's the show. That's more fun. That's the feel-good part. But if we don't have a foundation, then the house falls apart. It may not be flashy, it may not be fun-looking, but if you don't have it, you don't have a house. We've done a lot of theological work over the past couple of years, and I get it. Sometimes it's just not fun. Sometimes it's not flashy. But that is the foundation on which everything else rests. Because we act out of what we know. We act based on what we believe. But in 2023, we're going to get heavier and heavier doses of how exactly does this evangelism thing work. But I'm going to give up one of my secrets right now. I don't teach methods or systems for evangelism. Notice if you look back at your sermon notes. Oh, I didn't write it. Never mind. Usually I have the sermon title right there. Oh no, hang on. It's in the front of your bulletin. The front of your bulletin says that the message of this is sing your song. Sing your song. When Jesus sent that man on his way, he didn't ask him to enroll in an apologetics course. I've had 2 of those. both as an undergrad and a grad student. Apologetics is nerdy fun, but in all honesty, I never have brought anyone to Jesus using philosophical arguments. Not once. He tells that man, go and tell others what God has done for you. You go and you tell your story to someone else. There's no method for that. There's no system for that. There's no secret to it. It's not complicated. We overcomplicate it when we want to do all this philosophizing and theologizing and all of those things. We complicate it. When we say, I want to go to an evangelism class, well, that's fine. You can go to one, but understand, at the end of the day, that evangelism class that has failed you, if they don't tell you this thing, go tell other people what Jesus has done for you. That's evangelism. That's it. It seems stupid simple, but that's how it's done. No one can teach you how to do that. I can't teach you how to tell your story to somebody else because I'm not you. I can teach you maybe how to start a conversation, but in the end, you have to finish the conversation. You have to have the conversation. No one can give you or me the desire to do it either. Only the Spirit can give you that. Pastors and leaders in the church can brainstorm how to provide more opportunities for interaction, but you are the most effective evangelist to your unsaved family, friends, and coworkers. You are the most effective. It's fine to say, hey, come to my church, listen to my pastor, but honestly, that's great and all, and I love to see new faces, and I hope we see more and more new faces, but the church is not come and have my pastor get you saved. The church is for you to come and you learn how to go do that yourself. You get the tools that you need. And the most effective way to evangelize is just to open your mouth and tell people what Jesus has done for you. Sing to the Lord and let the world hear your song. Verse 5. I lost my page, sorry. Verse 5, sing to the Lord. He has done glorious things. Let this be known around the world. Shout aloud, sing for joy, people of Zion. God has done more for us than anyone could ever expect. We talked even last week about some of the glorious things that God's done. He created the world and everything in it. He provides what's necessary for its continued existence. He works miracles. He tore the veil separating humanity from divinity. He put on flesh. He ended the curse of sin and death. He has saved, is saving, and will save the souls of every person who confesses His lordship and believes in His resurrection. That's the God that we serve. Our job is to give that information to the world. Without discrimination, no exceptions. Everyone deserves to hear it from our mouths. The good news of Jesus Christ. And this morning, I have no fancy conclusion. There is no fancy conclusion for this message. I got to the end, I wrote a conclusion, and I said, that's terrible. I'm not going to do that. Here's what I'm going to give you. We have an opportunity this morning to do more of this. We're going to sing some more. Let your joy be heard. Remind yourself what God has done for you. Take the words of these songs, though, and the spirit behind them into your Thanksgiving celebrations this week. Talk to people who you know do not know Christ. Sing your song to them. Whatever that song is. Every song is different. Your song is different from mine. Your message of salvation, how you came to understand Him and how you relate to God, that's different for each person in this room. God has done something for you. He's done something for you. He's done something for you and for you. Take that song and tell somebody. We're going to sing this morning, but I want those words not just to settle in here, fall like the dust, but gather it all up. Take it with you when you leave today, and spend time this week dispensing the truth of the gospel through your story. Deal? All right, let's stand, and we're going to sing our song, and we're going to invite the world to worship with us.